On this episode of the Contagious Influences of America podcast, 6 decades of life has all led up to this. It's time for Chonda Pierce to tell the truth, and her truth isn't always pretty.
I have made a living telling my story and my testimony, my father's indiscretions and his mental illness and all of that. And yet, I didn't really talk about how the adverse effect of that. I talk about the healing power of Jesus, which is still the same. But the truth of the matter is, you can't walk some of these difficult roads without it having a good effect and a bad effect on you.
This is CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams. Chonda Pierce is a stand-up comedian, Emmy-nominated television host, actress, producer, and author. She's been making people laugh for decades with her wit and Southern charm. But most importantly, out of all those titles, she's my dear friend. She joins me back on this podcast today to discuss her latest project, which is her book. And it's titled, Life is Funny Until It's Not. It's available now at Amazon, wherever you get your books. And wow, it is just lighting up those bestseller rankings. She's been number one in multiple categories on Amazon. And for the first time in this book, she's sharing deep pain, personal darkness, and a lifetime of challenges. She does not hold back, my friends. It's a raw, emotional, and it reaches deep in your soul. But there's always a silver lining with Chonda, and you're going to see that right here on the podcast. I can't wait for you to see this interview, so let's get right to it. My good friend, Chonda Pierce. I do have one for you.
What is it? It's going to be ugly.
What's a joke you've always wanted to put out there, but it was just too off-brand?
I don't know, it's not off-brand, but my favorite joke, and sometimes I get the nerve to tell it, the difference between an Episcopalian and a Baptist. An Episcopalian will say hi to you in a liquor store. Now that's a joke. You know what I mean? I like joke. I don't tell jokes, I'm a storyteller, but that one, and I used to tell, and I need to go back to it, but I used to talk about going to the gynecologist for the first time after I had my first child, and he zips in on his chair, and it's a new gynecologist. Don't you hate to break in a new guy? And he zips in his rolling chair, you know, and I'm like, what are you, a 12-year-old at a Playland at McDonald's? You know, and you're in the stirrups, so it's just, you know, you paint this whole picture that if it's all women, you can paint that picture and they're all cracking up. But then you notice that one or two guy in the room just squatting down. And that's what always ticks me off, because I'm like, I was having such a good time till I saw you, buddy. You know, now I've got to figure out how to tell this without, you know, getting hate mail. But, you know, and so I tell the story about he zips in and I go, what is this, Playland at McDonald's? And you know, what was the whole takeaway? Oh, he says, well, I was trying to get pregnant. Well, you're not pregnant. And I said, well, thank you for that, because those are really cold instruments. That baby just went up to my throat. Yes. And I used to talk about that all the time. And man, it's been years and years, you know. And I don't know that I squelched it because it was so graphic, or I just got more material. You know what I mean? But I worry about the young comics coming behind me, because they're going to think they can get by with what I get by with, and they won't. You know, I have earned the right and the trust of my crowd to really talk about some hysterical things. You know, I think I tell a whole thing about dating, you know, and online dating, and so I actually can get by with talking about a guy that sends you the picture, you know, whereas I think some of the young comics, church people would go, oh, you know, they haven't earned that right. And you don't start the night off with that. You kind of ease your way into knowing if they're going to go with you or not, you know. I don't know that I'm hilariously funny. I think I am funny, but I think I'm my smart attribute is I can read the crowd. And I'm really great at that. And I think part of that is a preacher's gift.
And that's a real art. That's a real
It
science.
really is.
It really is.
It's a real gift because it saves you a lot of headache down the road. I can pretty much tell, and I say this all the time in concert, I can tell you who's not going to be here after intermission. So it was nice meeting you. Bye. I can tell by their face, or the little old ladies, and sometimes it's just because it's a long night and they leave. But most of the time I can tell who's going to usher their 12-year-old out. I got a really ugly note from a lady who brought her 7-year-old son to my show. And she was just, telling me, how I was so embarrassed and talked about sex and all this stuff. And I wrote her back and I go, you know what? I own a lot of this. But part of it, I just want to ask you, who brings a 7-year-old boy to hear a 60-year-old comic? You know what I mean? Woman, female comic. I'm not owning that. That was a bad mistake on your part. Because I wouldn't take a 7-year-old to see, a 60-year-old female comic whose majority of their career has been about women. You know what I mean? So it's like, you just can't please them all. There's no way. It's not possible.
So let's talk about your book.
Oh boy!
And it's unique.
Did you read it?
I have read parts of it, and but you know what I always do?
So
I always read the comments from people.
Of course,
that's
you do.
What I love.
I read the first page and the last page.
The first page, last page, and comments.
Yeah.
See what everybody else has to say about it. I learn more from comments than anything.
Yeah,
right?
That's probably true.
So life is funny until it's not. When has it not been funny in your life?
Oh, man.
Do we have a couple hours?
Yeah, exactly. I started saying, and that's probably the majority of the book. You have to throw the funny in there to earn the right to tell some of the not stuff. And I think for me, I didn't want to close this down, David, without having it all said. I have made a living telling my story and my testimony, my father's indiscretions and his mental illness and all of that. And yet, I didn't really talk about how the adverse effect of that. I talk about the healing power of Jesus, which is still the same. But the truth of the matter is you can't walk some of these difficult roads without it having a good effect and a bad effect on you. And so there were some things in my childhood that the residuals of walking that road, I made some bad life choices down through the years. I realized where some of my psyche comes from and how I do not commit to men. I had a therapist tell me one time, the miracle of your life, you're not a lesbian. I go, well, last I checked, no, it wasn't. I have a terrible time with rejection because I experienced so much of it in my childhood. And so, when I do find something I'm truly committed to and they don't commit back, it's devastating. And instead of just going, well, that didn't work out, I'm curled up in a corner for a few days. It's just and a lot of that is the rejection of a father's love or finding out about sexuality way too soon in your life when you're not ready. Because then in college, in high school, I would give myself away thinking that's what guys want, and then what you're left is, shame. You're left with shame. And then you have to work years to get through that. And so those are some of the concepts I wanted to talk honestly about. Dealing with widowhood. The good parts that I dealt with and the way I dealt with it was good. And then some of the ways I dealt with it was bad. I moved downtown Nashville thinking it would be great to have people around all the time instead of being isolated in a home we were just putting it on the market and to live in a great big house that you raised your kids in and they're gone and then your husband's gone. I knew my mental state did not need to be in that loneliness. So I moved to a big, condo downtown and enjoyed it for a little while until it was not a good idea. And then to go find something to eat is always a honky tonk, And so you can have that drink that helps you relax to walk back home, but you have 2 or 3, then your thought process is not what it should be. One night I was followed home and raped in 2016, and was abused sexually by a stranger, and that was horrific. It also, it's always that one more nail in a coffin of why I probably I don't date, I don't get out and see fellas. And the truth of the matter is, my phone really doesn't ring. Sounds noble, I just don't date, but my phone doesn't ring, and I'm okay with it, really. I lament about it sometimes. I cry about it. Why doesn't the Lord send me someone, But it's going to take a really unique man who jumps into this life, and I have a life. I have a farm and a home that I love now, and I don't know that, and I would want to be a good wife. I want to be a better wife this time, so I would allow myself to be absorbed by his life as I think it should be. He would be the leader of my life. So I got to find the really right leader that would lead me right back home. Or lead me back to the bus, or lead me into what I want to do, what I feel called to do. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff in the book. For every pinnacle of success and mountain high, there is that walk back down. And for every low and devastating and death, and I've experienced death of every kind. I am the surviving member of my family. I have a brother as well. But for every, bottom, that journey back up, it's the in-between of those ups and downs that you learn so much. And most of that I learned pretty well. And I wanted to share that journey with someone coming along behind me. And then some of it I didn't do well. And I wanted to be honest about that. I don't like Christian icons. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I sometimes get quite bitter about them. Mm-hmm. The minute, you introduce yourself to some Christian artist and they think very highly of themselves, I'm done. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like we work for the King of Kings. We don't have to be the king. And so I get very kind of bitter when I see people, puffing themselves up so much. It's the green M&Ms in a. I'm the one that goes and licks all of them and puts them back. So if you're one of those artists that demand certain things, I've probably licked on all your food.
Well, so my least favorite interviews, generally speaking, are artists.
Yes.
Who have not lived a enough life. Okay? And that's not everybody, but that's probably 80%.
Yeah.
Okay? And they'll book an artist in here. I'm like, really? I have to do that again? Because what is it about Christians that where they just don't want to reveal their struggles?
I don't know. And, and let me tell you, that comes with great vulnerability. Takes a lot of bravery. Lucille Ball, my favorite quote on the planet was Lucille Ball, who said, "I am not funny, what I am is brave." And that kind of vulnerability, comedy in itself takes a lot of bravery, because you're either going to have instant gratification or instant rejection. And so someone who's so codependent and, wants to please the whole wide world, how in the world I got in this business, I don't know. But I have been a people pleaser, sometimes to my detriment financially, and to my detriment personally, of just staying in a relationship too long, or a friendship that was toxic and I just didn't know how to walk away, So when you're a people pleaser, it can really work for you. It can also work against you if you're not careful. But I'm like you, someone who wants to dictate to me how to live life, and they're like 24, never been through a tragedy in their lives. I say that too about widowhood. Don't come up and put your arms around a widow and say, I know how you feel. I had a dog that passed. That actually happened. I go, oh, you just likened me losing my husband of 31 years to your chihuahua. Please, and I just roll my eyes and walk away. Don't try to be so empathetic if you don't have that. Mm-hmm. Just be sympathetic. And so you're right. I'm like you, to sit down and talk to a 21-year-old who's not yet lived life. And at the same time, the power of the Holy Spirit is beautiful. Mm-hmm. Once in a while, someone will speak into your life that really was a God thing, and they didn't have a really great point of reference, in grief or abuse or anything like that. And that's when you know it was a God thing.
And I don't mean to label people who are in their 20s, because a lot of Christians, whether they're in their 30s, 40s, right. 50s, 60s, and some never reveal their struggles.
Right.
That's a wasted opportunity, don't you think?
I think, I always say, people say, I want to tell my story. And I go, why? First of all, why? Have you ever told it before? The greatest thing is, sometimes you need to hear your own voice speak truth. When I began to see Christian counseling, I cannot say enough about it. It is just absolutely amazing. Wonderful counseling, brilliant counseling, coupled with your same faith base. That is just life-changing. And when that happens, sometimes just hearing your voice say, this happened to me. Now, I need steps to get through that or over it. I don't want to keep dreaming about that. Mm-hmm. I keep having this image in my head. I want to get rid of that face in my, so people can help you with that. And the Bible talks about renewing your mind. And so having help with that, I can remember starting out, and I used to tell a story about being a little girl at a water fountain, getting a drink of water, and two little saints of the church with the tall hair, because the taller the hair, the closer to God, pat me on the head, and water was going up my nose, and one of them whispered to her little friend, that's one of our preacher's daughters, she's not very Pretty. And I turned around and said, no, but I'm real SMART. Pardon me. Now I remember telling that, and deep down in my heart was hoping those two little old biddies was still alive to hear it. Mm-hmm. Because in reality, that's a horrible thing to do. Mm-hmm. And a horrible thing for two little old ladies to say in the presence of a child that she's not very Pretty. And that really happened. Now, I wrote the punchline, no, but I'm really SMART. I wrote that part, so it would have a weird place to go. The story would have a good ending, and it would be funny, and people would laugh, and it would be a release for them. But I realized I wrote that, when I first started telling, I told it as a jab. I wrote it because I wanted to please the church people so they don't get to, or their feelings hurt. Or it doesn't reveal too much that sometimes church people are really jerks, And I quit telling it because it was really a way for me to get back at them. And so I didn't need it anymore. Mm-hmm. There came a healing in your life when I didn't need to jab at them. They're probably dead by now because I'm so old, And so I remember stories that I used to tell, and I know where my heart was. But when healing comes along, I will say I think I'm funnier than I've ever been because I've had such healing time. Mm-hmm. And I don't need some of the stories I used to tell to get back, or take a jab or even a jab at God, even rolling your eyes. And, I used to tell about when my second sister died, standing at the graveside and hollering across the gaping hole, Mom, we are dropping like flies. And that really did happen. And I talked about how she came around to hug me and put her arm over my mouth so I would quit talking because I was about to just rip into the Lord. I was just very aggravated. And that was always a chuckle. It made everybody chuckle in the middle of telling a really tough story. And I don't tell that much anymore because I remember where my heart was. And now I tell about my sisters going, I'm going to see him again instead of death is so terrible, and mean. And it is terrible and mean. But now I have a better hope at the end of the story.
What did it take for you to realize that you needed help, that you needed counseling?
I think misery is always good when you're just miserable. I think for me, I would see patterns in my life show up again and again. The first time I really began to cry out for help, I hit the wall running in deep, dark depression. I look at that time as such a gift I could have destroyed my career. I could have had multiple affairs and just looking for love in all the wrong places, letting loneliness, carry me away. I look at that hitting the wall and getting so depressed as such a wake-up call from God to get this brain some help and this heart and mind to get in union. And when I wound up in Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital because I wanted to kill myself, it was interesting. It became one of the funniest routines of my career. Everybody laughs about it, and I'm always saying, if you have nothing to do tonight, you should just go hang out at the psychiatric hospital. It can be a kick, which I still think is true. But when I went, they give you a notebook to write everything you're feeling in, but they don't give you a pencil because you could hurt yourself. So that's weird. So you had to use a box of crayons, and I color-coded so many things in my life, And when I began to write out the dark things that were in my head, it was very apparent that so much was still lingering that needed to just get out. I say this all the time. I quoted it in a book that I wrote. Everything you drag out of the dark into the light has no more power over you. Because God knows your secrets, but he needs you to voice them out loud and get that mess out. And so I noticed on those pages some areas of my life. A lot of it was the people pleasing, was terrified that I'm not going to be loved or liked, that people aren't going to laugh, that I won't be able to provide. Disappointed in, a man that I loved dearly, but was too afraid to say, I'm disappointed in what's going on in your life right now. Because I just thought you have to be a sponge and take everything, So when I began to write some things out, it was very clear that these are some things that a professional could really help me with. And my biggest fear in that hospital was that I was going to be just like my father, who was extremely bipolar. And it was a great reprieve and release to know that I'm not, bipolar. I am I am depressed, but I am not the manic state that causes you to do wacky things, I do wacky things just on my own.
So let's talk about that relationship with your dad.
Yeah.
And some of the daddy issues you had. Okay. Let's talk about that and how it impacted you.
I think it's amazing the lack of fatherhood, and you can see in culture right now the lack of fatherhood, what's going on in our inner cities and with people who don't have strong fathers. It's apparent in people's sexuality that don't have strong fathers or overbearing mothers. And that's terrifying as a parent. As a parent, I was like, I have the ability to ruin my kids, Now, what's great, God is much bigger than your parent, so he can fix all that, and he can work on all that. And you can find help with every misguided and wrong thinking that you collected. But for me, I saw the escapades of my father. I can remember sitting there as a young girl and knowing that's the woman he's having an affair with. I would see how they dressed to keep his attention, and it would work. I would see how they flirted and flittered around, and you grab his attention at a manic time when he thought, I deserve this, and it became very narcissistic. That in turn taught me how to do that. And so in high school and college, I was a pretty manipulative little gal.
You were going to say what?
I almost said a joke right there that I better not. But I was, and I ran after my man. I chased him down. It took him 7 years to finally say yes, but I was just relentless because he was not going to, I was just determined he was not going to turn me down. Bless his heart, down through the year, after years go by, you go, I should have let him go. I should have let him run, but I was like, I'm not going to, he was Mr. Cheatham County High School, Mr. Civitan, and I just had to have him, and I got him. And sometimes you get what you deserved. But what's so great is then Jesus came along in our lives, and our marriage was beautiful, and it wasn't based on manipulation or flirtation. We had 2 beautiful children. But I learned some bad behavior watching my father's life. My father at one point in my childhood, he masturbated in front of me. And I remember telling this to a counselor, and she goes, "Oh, so your father molested you?" And I was like, "Oh no, he never touched me." And I was almost defending him, going, no, he would never do that. But she says, when sexuality is manipulated or molested in front of you as a child, it changes your thinking about sex, and it changes your thinking and brings discussion into your life long before your mind is ready to handle that. And so those were some of the very, very difficult things. The interesting thing, I've had counselor tell me, the hard part for me, there were days my dad was great. Would build the best playhouse you could ever ask for. I would tinker on a car with him, taught me how to ride a bicycle. One of the greatest things, he taught me how to fish and fish well, and so he was awesome. And then on a dime, he would be terrible. And I had a counselor say, if your father is bad 24/7, you can notice that and go, I don't want to be like that man. If your father is good, you could go, man, I want to achieve that. I want to be like that man. But if he is both, you are very confused as a child of going, which one of these men is, do I want to be like? Or who is it going to be when I get off the school bus? And how do I tiptoe around that? And that's where I learned a lot of comedy. If I could tiptoe around some things and make Dad laugh, he would either forget he was mad and going to, give me a beating, or he would, drag me off to, go work on some car I didn't want to work on, or, that's how it was a saving grace for me, was my sense of humor, was to keep my father, to entertain him. And so it made for a difficult time to figure out who that man is. Now, the sweetest thing was to find out that he was not divine, that only my heavenly Father is. Mm-hmm. That really left my earthly father off the hook. Not that made what he did right, or it didn't make it okay. It was still some work to get through those issues. But to know that my heavenly Father is perfection, oh man, I had a counselor who was so powerful one time, and we did this whole healing prayer and healing therapies. And then at the very end of the day, she went through photographs of my childhood, and she could show the eyes begin to change from this year to this year. So what happened between this year of your schooling and that year? And she began to really dig out some dark places. And at the end of it all, our very last session, she had me hold my hands out in front of me. And she said, "Now, do you see yourself as a baby?" And she goes, "I've seen pictures. What color were your eyes?" Blue, And my hair was all matted and, sad. And I was purple when I was born. And we were giggling and talking about that. Now, she said, "Do you feel your father's hands? He's holding your little bottom with one hand and your head with the other and just rocking you." And I said, you close your eyes, go, "Yeah, I feel that." You feel how warm and loving. And he was so proud of you when he looked at you, and he adored you. And he was so excited to have that little girl. And then he kissed you on the cheek and placed you in your mother's womb. Wow.
Yeah.
That was your first father.
Yeah.
And he trusted the womb he could put you in. And he knew the plan that he had for me. The plan not to harm me. That life will come along and do some tough stuff. But he knew that little girl was going to sit here at the age of 64 and talk to David Sams.
Okay, we'll get right back to Chonda in just a second. But first, a message from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Jackie Dorman. Are you longing to find your soulmate, but you're tired of online dating, singles ministries, blind dates, or even being set up on bad dates by well-meaning family and friends? If none of that's worked for you and you have no idea how to meet marriage-minded men or even truly Christian men who will seek you out for a lasting, committed relationship without the head games, then I invite you to join me in my free Married in 12 Months challenge. Look, there's nothing good or sacred or even noble about sitting in the waiting room. So in this challenge, I'm going to teach you why now is your time to find love. What are the lies that are holding you back? Why God wants you married, the biblical law of attraction, and the tools you need to become a bride. Don't wait any longer. Just sign up for my free Married in 12 Months challenge today at lovestories.com, and you can step into the love story that God has already written about you. That's lovestories.com.
I see a sparkle in your eye I have not seen for a while.
Yeah.
I do.
Thank you. You know, I think when it's all...
I don't think I've ever seen these eyes before.
And we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bloodshot. I was up late.
So you write in your book that tragedy plus time equals comedy. I just got to ask you, how do you find the strength to encourage when you're discouraged?
First of all, you rehearse in the dark what you learned in the light. So I'm like anybody else. I've been through menopause and still had to go be funny. It was a little more bitter at the time, but, I've had the flu bug and still have to go be funny, because people bought a ticket and this is what they're expecting. And so you just do your stuff that works. You've sat here and interviewed people and you were like, I'd really just rather go upstairs and take a nap, But they're scheduled. You have to do it. You do what you know how to do and your skill set, and you deliver. Mm-hmm. Opryland probably taught me that. Singing and dancing at Opryland, 5 shows a day, 6 days a week, and every one of them had to be 110%. Or you wouldn't get your paycheck. Mm-hmm. So you do what works. On the ministry side, the beautiful thing for me, I think that was one of the signs that there must be a God. Because at the end of the night, and people would praise with you and sing, worship with you, or they would pray at the end of the night and come to know Jesus, or whatever the theme of that particular show was or that particular night, you would see it become effective. And you knew you didn't want to be there. I just want to go curl up in the bed and just, cover myself up and go to sleep. And yet you saw what God did. That's the most humbling thing there is, because it's not about me. I don't know how these TV preachers get so puffed up. Because when I see God work in front of me, and I know me, must be a God, because I didn't do that. I couldn't pull that off. I'm not that talented, And so that begins to strengthen your spiritual walk. I mean, when you start realizing God is who he says he is, and he delivers when he says he will deliver, that'll blow your mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was going to say a joke, but I won't.
Come on. We can edit it out.
The TV preachers getting all puffed.
Yeah.
They were on the same drug that the president was on for the State of the Union.
and will be again. Yeah. Good. Lord have mercy.
So what about life is not funny that you'll never quite understand?
Well, here's death for one thing. I can look at the deaths of my sisters. One was 15 when she died with leukemia. One was 20 when she was killed in a car wreck. And I look at the way life unfolded and the way my father left town, the residual effects that our abusive home had for me. My brother is about almost 10 years older than I am. So he was gone to college and out of the house. He was 18 and was out of there. And I had 10 more years to live with my father and his odd life and his abuse. And so it's almost like we were raised in two different households. Dad got really bad as the years went on. And I know it was really, really bad for my big sister. I read some things in her diary after she died that I could realize we probably had more in common than we ever talked about or knew, and maybe even worse. And so, because I remember when she went to college, she made my mother pledge that she would never separate my sister and I, my little sister and I, that she would always make us share a room. There's got to be a reason for that. And so that was a secret, I will never know. But I look at that, and they're untimely deaths, and yet heaven is our goal. And so they are where our goal, they made the goal. They touched down, they got it in. But I think their deaths, I look at it and go, look what God spared them of. Mm-hmm. That instant healing, that they're in heaven. They didn't have to walk through the residual of trying to figure out who a Heavenly Father is and who. So I look at that death. I look at my mother's death, and I go, she lived a good, long life. It was basically, to tell you the truth, was kind of a botched surgery that began the end of her. And that was terrible, but I know she wanted to see those girls. So you can sigh about that death. You can be very sad. I see the death of my father, and I think it's so sad of what a wasted life. But I'm grateful that I talked to him before he left the world, and the air was clear, and forgiveness is so powerful. Whether they accept your forgiveness, whether they ever say, I'm sorry, whether, they ever admit to anything, it just makes your life lighter, and you can approach someone that hurt you with a great tenderness when there's been forgiveness taking place. And so I see all of that happen. But I see that my husband, man, that's a hard one. We had just finally figuring it out. You know what I mean? He had a horrible bout of alcoholism in the last 5 years of his life. And I think, what a horrible way to end it. When, and you remember meeting David, he was a healthy guy. He climbed mountains. He ran marathons. He was a beautiful, beautiful man. But he was so saddened by the departure of our oldest child, my daughter. And so that, I hate that he didn't experience any healing from that, or never got to see his grandchildren, never got to know them. And so I feel so sad for that. And I wouldn't want him back. If I was having a picnic every day with my grandkids, it would really be hard, because I would think, David deserves this. He needs to see this. I wish he was here. Because I wouldn't want him back into that pain. Mm-hmm. He left. So those are hard. You can kind of justify, okay, God did a good thing, took him out of this pain. And that is probably will be the why, and probably until I die, is my daughter. 14 years it's been. 14 years. I have a 14-year-old grandson and a 10-year-old grandson. I've always just prayed. I just like to meet them. At first, you miss the diapering. You miss the first walk. You miss the first Christmas. Oh, my goodness. I'd be broke because I'd buy them a car. When you want a car? Are you 10? Okay, you can have a car. I would just love that, because that's my love language, is giving. I would have spoiled them. I think I would have been a fun grandma. But now they're 14 and 10. The amazing thing, I just keep trying. I don't know why. I still don't know why. I've heard her mention some things that still doesn't really seem to justify completely cutting her parents off. And not just her parents, on my whole side of the family, And so there's just this huge gap of, I cannot put a finger on, why am I so horrible that I was not allowed to know these two little boys.
So was that an overnight thing, or was there?
It seemed like it to us. Now she married and and established her own life, and that was great. And we would never show over her house unannounced or uninvited. And then he was a lawyer. And when she was expecting, he was studying for the bar. They decided to move in with us to save some money, and he was going to study for the bar, and she's expecting. And I had that big old house in Murfreesboro, if you remember, and it seemed like fun times. I remember she gave me this scrapbooking box of goodies. When I opened the box, it was all about being a grandmother. And I screamed bloody murder. That was their way of revealing. And I mean, she had the wedding, any little girl would want. We gave her whatever she needed, put her through school, set them up in a place when they finally did decide to move and help put the nursery together. And it seemed like everything was good until the day that baby was born. And then the wheels came off. And part of it was we heard they didn't want us in there when the baby was born. And we were like, well, fine with that. We didn't want to do that anyway. That'd be weird. But we didn't realize the room we're visiting in is where they give birth now. Back then, you go to a different room and have a baby. And so there was a miscommunication there, and that was fine. We left the room, and she wound up having a C-section anyway. And it was that kind of there was these miscommunication things. But it still doesn't seem like it would warrant that we were not allowed to visit or see the baby. I saw my first grandson when he was an infant, brand new, to a few days old. And then when he was 3 months old. And then I think maybe again when he was 6 months. And then I didn't see him again till he was like 3. And he was across the room at a friend's wedding. And they came. And that's when we saw him for the first time. And then she turned around and we noticed she was pregnant. So that was my husband, I will never forget it. He was like, we got to go. He didn't want to stay for the reception. He was just brokenhearted, So, and then here it is, 14. Here's the good news. I just never give up. I just will send an email. And I'll be honest, in the 14 years of this happening, there have been nights, how could you do this? And I'll send a great killer of a letter. I'll fill one with scripture and how to reconcile. I'll, talk about God's idea for family and community. I have tried it all. I've filled it, I've sat in counselor's office, and a lot of it is getting over this feeling of what's wrong with me. It always comes back to what's wrong with me. If I was a perfect child, I could have straightened my dad out. I mean, if I'd been a little bit funnier, he wouldn't have left and gone had some liaison with somebody. Or if I could consoled mother better, she wouldn't have had so many hard, difficult and sad nights, So it's always me. I always take it on myself. And I know that's wrong, but I do. So I have my counselor on speed dial when those, thoughts come along. But I am constantly fighting those voices of how come, is it something I'm doing wrong morally? Is it something I'm doing wrong as a human being? Why I'm not allowed to know these boys. Mm-hmm. But I never gave up. I keep praying. I keep trying. I'll send notes, and then I'll go months and months and just leave her be. Which she probably appreciates. But at Easter, I sent a note that just said, "What would be the scenario in your life that someday I could meet them? What would that look like? I mean, is there a certain scenario or a parameter, or what would that look like?" I think I was honest with her and saying, because frankly, I don't want to meet them on my deathbed. I fell and broke my back, and so that brings first time you fall after 60. It's a reality that I am old as dirt. So I cracked 2 vertebrae in my back and flat on my back. I had a lot of thinking to do and couldn't move, for 5 days. And I wrote her and I just said, I just, whatever that is, I just would like to know what would be that criteria. And a couple of weeks went by, and out of the clear blue, I got a note that said, "I think we could do that." And May the 15th, which is already after the book came out and everything, and I didn't talk about her in the book. She asked me not to. But May the 15th, we met at a Cracker Barrel, and I met my grandsons for the first time.
Wow.
14 and 10. Now, she probably may not like hearing this, but at this point in my life, many years ago, I told her, you can't bring pain into someone's life and then dictate to them how they're supposed to handle it. So I would, from time to time, mention it on stage. And I don't know why. Sometimes I really do think it was a prompting of the Holy Spirit, that because when I would mention it, women come out of the woodwork. That there is a generation of young people these days that withhold love or support or anything. They're so used to having life like they want it. And they've gotten information on a device in their hand, since they were in school. And so we have created this me generation. And I don't know that that's what she thinks, but I just think that's part of it, that we've created young people that just, it has to be their way. And they don't know how to adapt or understand that, life isn't always perfect. And this visit, we had a good visit. It was good. And I got a nice note back that said that, maybe we'll do this again sometime. They don't have time now till August. So I wait, and I may never see him again. I might, I hope so. I fight the urge of going and buying up everything for a 14-year-old and everything for a 10-year-old, I fight the urge of, trying to figure out where they live and all that. I used to, wonder what their house looked like. But I just let her do what she thinks she has to do. And all I can do is let them know how much I love them. I was a nervous wreck meeting them, wondering if they would like me, I had my girlfriends with me on the bus, and I asked would you like to see the bus inside? And so I texted them going, get off the bus. They want to see the bus. And it was like ants running out of there. There was a Waffle House down the road. They all ran to a Waffle House, so that we could have a long time. And they loved the bus, what little kids wouldn't? And then they walked off. And at the last minute, I stepped off the bus really quick. I thought, I'm going to just go for it. And I hollered, would it be okay if I have a picture? And I had my picture made with them.
Oh, look at that.
I know. So all these little things,
That's why you look different to me.
Resolve, maybe. I don't know. It is. It's a very joyful thing. It's also hard to not, you have to fight the what ifs, or we should have's, or you have to fight that. I used to have a counselor when I said, I should have done this, I should have said that. She goes, stop shooting on yourself, which I love that line. But I have to fight the thing of going, but all this wasted time, Mm-hmm. David, the last thing he did before he died that week, he was just not feeling well, but he had planted a bunch of fruit trees on the farm. And he made a beautiful sign, and it said Sawyer's Orchard. And those trees, when I drive by them now, and they're big, and to me, they're beautiful. And it's like, and there's apple and peach and plum and pear. He drew him a little map of what each one of them were. He's so David. And but when I drive by them, sometimes I go, oh, look at your trees, hon. And then sometimes I drive by and go, oh, they're so big. That means so much time. Yeah.
I told you were going to need the Kleenexes.
It's because you always do that.
Thank you, my friend.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Oh, my goodness. I wasn't expecting that.
I know. I wasn't expecting it either. I'll probably hate myself for telling, but...
No, you know what?
It just is what it is.
And it gives people hope.
That's exactly right.
It gives people hope that
I run into people, they don't even know where their kids are. At least I've known. She lives in Knoxville, you know what I mean? My brother has access, or at least has her phone number. He's not allowed to give it to me, which, that really, it became difficult for every relationship in the family. The ones that she would contact, the ones she wouldn't. That's the ones that didn't get contact. where, I have another cousin she had nothing to do with, and they used to be close. And then I have a cousin that she calls every now and then. So it's like, we don't know what the picking and choosing is, and it tears people apart. It tears families apart.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so happy that you had that moment.
I know.
14
it really
years.
Was. 14 years. You can't give up praying.
So there's
that's keeping the faith. Wah, wah, wah.
And there's still some good things that come out of Cracker Barrel. We keep hearing all these awful things.
Listen, what's so funny is I sent the picture to, or I just sent a note. And the picture, I blur out the faces, because I don't ever want her to be upset. But I sent it to Mike Huckabee, which governor is such a good friend of mine. And he's walked this road with me for 10 years, and prayed, and his wife, Janet. And I sent him a picture. And in the back was Waffle House. But the Waffle House way off in the distance at Cracker Barrel. And he goes, couldn't you come up with a different between Waffle House and Cracker Barrel? And there you're meeting your grandkids. I go, I'll take whatever I can get. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I'm just grateful she didn't say climb to the top of Mount Rainier.
Right. You would have.
I would have tried.
Oh my goodness. Did we cover everything you need to cover here? I think so.
I do.
Yeah.
I am still number 1, 2, and 3 on Amazon.
I know.
That's hilarious. That's what Andrew says. I don't know. I guess that's supposed to be good.
And I still want to talk to you about working with you on our, we started our therapy.
Oh, yeah, you were telling me about that.
We started Mind Health Management, separate company, and we have 30,000 therapists, 1,300 are Christian therapists. Mm-hmm. And, we just kept getting all of these people.
Absolutely.
That need help. And, it's one thing
I want you to
encourage them and to give them hope, but then you got to give them tools.
Absolutely.
So we worked out this deal, and we worked on this for 2 years. And we finally partnered up with a major company in Canada that had all the licensing done.
Oh,
for all the states.
Right.
And they've never done anything in the U.S., so we worked all that out.
Wow.
And we became their U.S. distributor,
right.
a marketer distributor. And we now, if you check out KeepTheFaith.com, you'll see it. And also lovestories.com.
Okay, good.
And we're starting to expand. But the next thing we want to do...
You need to do a dating site now. You'd have all the bases covered. And then a funeral. Bereavement section. That would be really good. My brother and I founded Branches Counseling Center. Someday I want you to go to, you and Shelley need to come to Murfreesboro, and I want to take you through it. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
I didn't know you did that.
We have 5 of them now across the country, but Murfreesboro's the biggest. We also won some big giant award, #1 weight loss clinic in the state. But it's huge. It's a vision I had when I left Vanderbilt. And it was just one of those God things. I remember I would spend the days at my brother's house while David was at work because he was afraid to leave me when I first got out of the hospital, And I remember falling asleep on his couch, and I woke up. He would always, my brother, his story, he wrote a book called Failure and How I Achieved It.
Oh, wow.
His name is Dr. Mike Courtney. You need to have him.
Yeah, we should have him. Is he in Murfreesboro?
He's a doctor, a psychologist. Yeah.
Okay.
But we founded this clinic, and it's huge now. My stomach is really growling. I'm hungry, but it's huge in what God is doing. But I had this dream. I woke up. I said, I had this weirdest dream, and he goes, "What was it?" And I said, David and I were outside getting the weeds out of this flower bed in this brick building, and there was a great big tree, one tree in this building, in the yard, and across the thing it said, "I am the vine and you are the branches." It was gnarled in the branch of the tree. And I said, and then there was this one window, and Mike, you were in there, and one of your kids, I think, and Doris, and some people I didn't know, but they were going, okay, well, we've got to move the AA group to the bigger room because it's gotten just so many people. And then we got divorce care. But then our counselors, we need 2 more offices. And y'all were talking about how we're going to fit people in. And I said, it was just the most weirdest thing. And I looked over, he's crying, and Doris, his wife, is crying. because they said, do you hear your voice? It was just this clear, it's like you going, your eyes, it was this clarity in my voice that I hadn't had in a while. And it was so vivid that I've never had this happen before. I said, I got to go home and get my easel. I have to paint that. And all I painted was the flower bed and a window hanging in the air and that tree that said, I am the vine. And I brought it, my brother came by and saw it. He was like crying. Well, we had Bible study that night. We had moved Bible study. He had Bible study in his home all the time, and we moved it to my house because my living room was bigger, because we had about 50 people now. It was just going crazy. He's an amazing teacher. And so it's a lot of people in recovery, or it was in our Bible study. And this man comes up and says, I hear you guys are looking for a building. And I had not told anybody this dream, neither had my brother. And he said, no, we're not looking for a building. And I'm fixing donuts and coffee, And I said, what's the building? And he said, well, I've just got a place. I can't, for some reason, I've not been able to rent it. And I just thought maybe you want to move there and have the meetings and all there. And he said, well, and my brother said, I'll go take a look at it. He called me crying, you got to come over here. So I got in my car. You have to cross Freedom Drive and turn right, and there's the building. And there was one tree in the yard, and there's old weedy flower bed, and one big picture window. And we put the shingle out, said Branches Counseling Center. And one day, we were just in there, he would counsel a lot of people, and then one day this lady walks in and said, I'm a clinician, I'm a clinical director of a counseling center in Nashville, but I want to stay in Murfreesboro. I live in Murfreesboro. Her name was Tracy. And she said, I was like to put my application in. We're like, and so here she came, and she said, I drive this road all the time. It's the first time I ever saw Branches Counseling Center. And then there was like another guy comes in. I run the AA for Murfreesboro. We've been looking for a place for AA to meet. And it was just like one thing after another like that. Well, that was 15 years ago. Yeah.
And thanks again, Chonda. Life is Funny Until It's Not is the name of Chonda's book, and it's available right now wherever you purchase your books. And do check out Chonda.org. She's live right now all over the country. She's appearing, she's touring. And boy, what a night. What a fun night you'll have if you see her live on tour. So check out Chonda.org for her schedule to see if she's coming to your area. This has been CIA, Contagious Influencers of America, from the producers of Keep the Faith. Please do rate and review us. Give us 5 stars. That would be pretty cool. And check out our website at contagiousinfluencers.com, where you're going to find all of the episodes that we've done. I think we're at about 250 episodes or so. And check out our radio show website at KeepTheFaith.com. We've just given that a whole new look, a whole new feel, and there's something for everybody there. A great place to get your entertainment. So check out KeepTheFaith.com. I'm David Sams. This has been CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. Go out there this week and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living in black and white. See you next time.